Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your patience today. Thanks for joining us for our Emotional Intelligence webinar with the Carlyle Group. My name is Zach Graham, and I am a member of the Hay Group team. I'm also very pleased to have Matthew Wells join us today from the Carlyle Group. Before we begin, I just have a few housekeeping items to cover. So you can maximize your screen in the upper right-hand corner to make the slides easier to read. The webinar is in listen-only mode, but we encourage you to send any questions you have throughout the presentation to the chat feature found at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We'll review all questions at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to your question in our allotted time, we will take it offline and you'll get an answer from us. You'll also be receiving a copy of today's presentation. We'll send that out after the webinar as well. So let's get started. So we realize that there is a varying degree of familiarity on this topic. So as such, the goal is to encompass aspects of this topic that will resonate with everyone. Of course, we're more than happy to go into further detail about anything discussed today. Just to give you an overview of our agenda today, I'll first discuss the background of EI and how it fits in our leadership framework. I will then talk about why this is so important for today's leaders, and this will set the stage for Matt to discuss how the Carlyle Group has implemented and uses our tool. I'll then discuss the development of the EI competencies as well as showing you examples of the feedback reports. And we'll finish with a Q&A period to answer any questions that you may have. So before we begin, we'd just like to ask you a quick question to gauge your familiarity with emotional intelligence. So if you could answer based on what your familiarity is with emotional intelligence, that would be great. From not at all familiar to very familiar. So we'll give you a few seconds to answer that. All right, so it looks like the majority of you are at least somewhat or very familiar with EI. That's great. For those of you who aren't, we hope that this is an informative presentation for you. And for those of you who are, we hope we leave you with some new ideas around EI. So before we dive into our model of emotional intelligence and how the Carlyle Group makes use of our tool, let's take a step back and talk about some background. To start, I'd like to talk about Hay Group's Atrium. This represents a suite of offerings spanning 3 areas of vital importance to organizations today. These tools help organizations to attract, retain, and develop talent, engage and enable your workforce, and finally, compensate those individuals. If you'd like any information about our offerings in the Atrium, please let us know. Today's focus will be on the talent zone. So where does EI fit in with the talent zone and with our overall methodologies here at Hay Group? We know from our research that up to 30% of the variance in financial results can be explained by differences in organizational climate. Similarly, the styles that leaders use account for a very large percentage, up to 50 to 70% of the variance in organizational climate. Emotional intelligence is really where it all begins. What an individual brings to the table, the behaviors or the EI competencies, dictate the leadership styles an individual will use. Developing these competencies within emotional intelligence and with the emotional and social competency inventory allows leaders to have the tools to make smart decisions in how they lead and can ultimately lead to more effective collaboration. Emotional intelligence has really become a very popular topic among business leaders today. And as such, there are a lot of assessments out there that measure it. Our assessment is the only assessment that is a direct result of Daniel Goldman, Richard Boyatzis, and our research. And as we discussed earlier, our framework measures competencies or behaviors. And because of that, you can use this tool to assess, develop, and coach your leaders, as Matt will explain shortly. So what is EI? For those of you who answered not familiar at all with EI, Daniel Goleman really, I think, provides the best answer. And then he describes this as the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. And it really, I think, he captivates the essence of what EI is and what our philosophy is at Hay Group. And as we saw in the leadership framework, being able to do this has a subsequent effect on results. So what does our model of emotional intelligence look like? We define EI within 4 quadrants. At the core of this model is self-awareness. Being self-aware allows and enables you to both manage yourself and be aware of others. And then these 3 quadrants culminate in how you manage your relationships, so the relationship management quadrant. And this is really where emotional intelligence hits the pavement and helps drive performance and helps leaders to have a positive impact on others. So now that we've seen the framework, let's see some examples of this in action. From the study here, research has shown that EI competencies distinguish the star performers from the average. They are also better predictors of success than previous experience or IQ. And they allow leaders to create high-performing climates. So in a few minutes, Matt will discuss how the Carlyle Group has seen this model help develop their leaders. Well, I think we've seen a little bit about why he is so important, but let's continue this. I think it's safe to say that we've all encountered something like this that you're seeing right now. At the end of the day, we're all being asked to do more with less, whether that means make good decisions quicker with more impact, get it right the first time and increase retention. We're all being asked to do the impossible. And so with that, we ask ourselves, does being bright help? And the short answer is yes, it absolutely does. Those individuals in the professional and technical field are usually in the top 20% of intelligence. So intelligence is really, it's a baseline. What differentiates good from outstanding performers? Organizations consistently list the behaviors above, and all of those can really map back to emotional intelligence in our emotional and social competency inventory. So we have another little interactive polling question for you. Let's look at 2 bosses. So as you can see, boss A on the left is a great listener, is courageous, shows a sense of humor, is decisive, shares authority, while boss B tends to be a blank wall, is secretive, indecisive, blames people as arrogant. Which one would you rather work for? So we'll ask you to answer here. Give you a few seconds here to answer, and then we'll continue. All right, so not a big surprise here, but an overwhelming majority of you would rather work for boss A. I know I would. So we've seen the theory and the model behind EI, but how does it work at a living, breathing organization? And I now have the pleasure to introduce to you Matthew Wells from the Carlyle Group. Matthew?
Thanks very much, Zach. Boy, there's always one, right? One person who would rather work for that bad boss, but what can you do? I hope they're happy. So thanks very much, Zach, for allowing me to talk about emotional intelligence. It's something that, and the SKey tool, it's something that I've had a good deal of familiarity with. And let me just begin this by giving you a little bit of background about myself and then a little bit of background about the organization. So I am responsible for really all aspects of talent management here at Carlyle. I joined in November of 2011. And my title is Head of Learning and Development for the Carlyle Group, and I held a similar title previous to that at a company called the Linde Group, and that is a large engineering and manufacturing firm, a global engineering and manufacturing firm, and there I really developed a four-tiered leadership and management curriculum that found its way throughout the entire global organization. And emotional intelligence and the ESCI 360 tool is really the foundational piece and the major assessment tool for people entering that program then, as it is at Carlyle now. Before that, I worked at Goldman Sachs for a number of years, for about 9 years, and was one of the folks there at the beginning of Goldman Sachs University, and really found that to be a tremendous experience in establishing a corporate university. Prior to that, I'm actually a technologist by trade and a design engineer, and I hold degrees in engineering and technology management. So why, oh why, do you have an engineer talking to you about emotional intelligence? I would say that is because when I was introduced to the notion of emotional intelligence, probably about 15 years ago, it really occurred to me that folks in the technical field had very little of it, and it's something that we could really develop. So that was my first exposure to it, and ever since then I have decided to pursue the helping organizations develop emotional intelligence is really the foundational skill. So that said, let's talk about Carlyle. And so again, I joined in November 2011. First person to hold any title related to talent management, people development, learning and development, you name it. We are an organization of about 1,200, actually 1,300 people now, and have offices around the globe. We do have some existing annual performance management and people processes, mostly around performance reviews, and then we have a combination of multi-rater and 360 assessments that we use, all to assess our common corporate cultural competencies, if you will. And then we had, before I came in, some assorted ad hoc vendors come in and do leadership management training for different pieces of the organization. But again, everything very unstructured, ad hoc, and really up to the manager themselves to bring the vendor in. So, what's the issue? Why do we need to assess emotional intelligence, and what's going on with the population at Carlyle? Well, when I came, we were in a very rapid growth mode. We were pre-IPO, and so we had a tremendous amount of people joining the firm from outside the firm. We had a lot of people being promoted within the firm, people who were individual contributors suddenly being frontline managers suddenly being middle managers, and all on up the chain. So we had really a lot of folks finding themselves in very new areas and spans of control, if you will, around management. And so there was a real need to bring in a tool and a program to help these managers be effective. I think that to speaking about how we talk about management at Carlyle, we really had no common language or measure of what I call foundational leadership behaviors. And foundational, by foundational I mean really how should we treat each other at that level, at that really foundational level. We just didn't have that language around the firm. And so I actually came to the firm. I led with in my interviews with the notion of I'm bringing this idea of emotional intelligence and all the trappings that come with it into Carlyle. If you don't like that, don't hire me. But I came with that because I firmly believe that that was the key to unlocking people's management and relationship management skills. I was wise enough not to use the term emotional intelligence when I got into the firm with many of the managers as I started to do needs assessment, and instead started talking about how do we better manage relationships and using that language instead of the kind of squishy language of emotional intelligence that I, as an engineer, try to keep away from in my dialogues and feel a little uncomfortable with all the time knowing how important it is. But keeping the language kind of business-oriented and talking about managing relationships was what I found to be effective in getting people to buy into this notion of emotional intelligence. So we instituted again, a tiered leadership and management program, and in so doing, we used the emotional and social competency inventory tool to as a measure of people's baseline foundational leadership skills. So we did a pre-program assessment about a month before people attended one of our leadership programs. We would have them do the 360, and we would distribute the reports really only 1 or 2 days before the program started. Now, we did that because we didn't want to distribute it a week before the program started so that people wouldn't delve too far into the reports and get the wrong ideas. However, we didn't want to distribute it during, if you will, during the program, because we know that everyone would just be sitting on pins and needles until they actually got the results back. So we gave them a couple days just to look at it, and then we got them into the program. And that really helped kind of set the tone. People were very curious about what's this stuff I've just been rated on, and why should it be important to me? And so during the program, we ran that down in terms of emotional intelligence concepts. So we use emotional intelligence in combination with a range of management and personality models and tools. So things that look somewhat similar to situational management, if you will, situational leadership, and other kind of personality assessment tools as well. All the time weaving in that the foundation of everything we're talking about is emotional intelligence. Self-awareness, how you can, self-control, emotional awareness, is really, really incredibly important for any leader, and is the basis. So then, once we finished with our 2-day program, we would make it a point to sit down. I would make it a point to sit down with each and every one of our participants and do a coaching session, one-on-one coaching with each person to help them interpret the report, get the most from the data that's within the report. There's a tremendous wealth and depth of information that really very few people take the time to look at in the report and really take the time to ultimately come to a good understanding about. So this is a great opportunity for me to interact with people, learn what they thought about the program, but also to help them get the most out of the feedback that they got, and then to use the tools that were available in the program for them to start developing their emotional intelligence and management skills. It also provided that great area, as I said, for them to focus on their development. And then we have as a next phase, as you might guess, we've started and embarked on our program to get all of our managers into our leadership management programs. Next phase will be to look at a reassessment and see if we've moved the needle on some of these competencies somewhere around 18 months down the road. And that serves as a bit of a segue to what's the impact been and where are we going with this. So what have been the results so far? Well, by the end of 2013, as I mentioned, we expect every manager in our support divisions globally to have undergone the SKey and to have gone through our leadership and management programs. And then our deal side managers are going to be the folks that are going to be up next. What have been some of the challenges? Definitely the notion of people giving both quantitative and qualitative feedback is actually new to many. Even though we do have a 360 that we use for performance management, it can be a real challenge getting people to provide really how they actually feel about this person's social competencies. So at first, our first classes had pretty low completion rates in terms of this tool, and when people did complete it, everyone was a 4 out of 5 for everything. And that's really actually came as no surprise to me, considering the maturity of our ability to offer people feedback. And so one of the things that I made sure of, and I recommend as perhaps a best practice, is when you're implementing this kind of tool, the first people that you might want to shoot for in terms of being rated, so people that undergo the 360, are folks who are probably at a pretty high-performing level, so that people can feel good about giving the feedback around their emotional and social competencies, and just kind of acclimate the organization to providing this kind of feedback in this kind of format. If you have all the problem children come up first, you might never get to getting the open and honest feedback that you're really trying to get to. What have the victories been so far? Well, it is now seen as a core management skill and behavior. We have this common foundational leadership language. It is rapidly propagating throughout the organization. We have participants who are, having gone through the 360, quite willingly sharing their results with their managers, and as a matter of fact, quite willingly sharing their takeaways from the program and from the feedback with their groups and their team members, thanking them for the input and then promising to take action to improve their emotional intelligence skills. And we have our next level managers really are engaged in helping to develop these skills. So we've got a lot of a good buzz around the notion of managing relationships, of emotional intelligence being a key and core competency in the organization. And as a matter of fact, our founders, just in our annual senior leadership retreat, we had a couple of our founders use the phrase emotional intelligence during their speeches. There's a picture of one of our founders, David Rubenstein, saying, "I love EI." Well, maybe he didn't exactly say that, but he did mention those two words in sequence. And for me, that's a huge victory in this organization, trying to get that language through. Where are we going to, in going forward? Well, we're going to continue to use this tool. It has been quite valuable for us so far, and we are looking for that to continue. It provides really that level of detail that our typical annual 360 and multi-rater process just doesn't offer, just does not get to. And so this gives us a lot of detail, a lot of good meat on the bone to talk to our managers about their leadership behavior. And it really is much more actionable than our formal 360. We've really started to see that since we go to the market, if you will, as this is not tied to the performance management process. This is all about your personal development, and this is all about your managers and people in the organization's personal development. We're starting to see some real genuine feedback. And not only in not everybody's a 4 anymore, so that has stopped being the default answer, but also the quality of our feedback in terms of the verbal responses too. So verbal in terms of the written responses. So the tool has both a quantitative and a qualitative aspect to it, and we're starting to see a lot of commentary now start to come through in written form, providing the really important color. As a matter of fact, most people view that as the most valuable part when people start offering that level of detail in their own words about people's emotional and social competencies. And we're going to continue to use this as a way of identifying development areas, even for potential managers. So folks who are being groomed for management positions or moving through the management chain before they even move into the role, we are looking for this to be a great kind of assessment tool, if you will, and a way for them to start working on some of the those management behaviors before some of the less desirable management behaviors start to get ingrained. So that's a bit of our story. We've had a lot of success. The Hay Group provides tremendous support and has been quite patient as we get this off the ground. And so I'm going to stop there and hand it over to Zach and let him take it from here.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate your insights in the Carlyle story. So, together with Matt, we've really explored the model of emotional intelligence. Matt has given us some great examples of how this can be used, but what does it look like? What does it feel like? How do we measure it? Kind of those questions, I think, are left to answer. So, there's this big notion of perception versus intent. And we know that, as the title says, good intentions aren't enough. We don't always come across the way we intend to. We may have the best of intentions, but ultimately, how we are perceived by others, our bosses, our peers, direct reports, is really what matters. If you have a boss like the boss B, and someone who you would classify as an ineffective manager, I would venture to say that he or she probably didn't know that they were being ineffective. So again, lack of self-awareness. So that's why 360 feedback is so important. So a key theme with SKey is development. We talk about development. Matt has talked about development. And as Matt really discussed, Carlyle Group is creating a culture around DI, and they've had some really interesting wins with that. The SKey is a universal tool. It's used by organizations of all sizes, from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofits. Because it's universal, it can be used at all levels within an organization. So clients of ours use the tool with early high potentials all the way up to the C-suite. We don't, however, really use the SKey for selection, downsizing, performance management, things like that. It's really about development. That's the key. And individuals who focus and develop these EI competencies and these kind of best practice behaviors have characteristics in common that everyone's really looking for today. They tend to be real about their workload. They play to their strengths and are very eager and willing to hear feedback. The SKey feedback report and 360 survey facilitates a structured, confidential way to give individuals feedback. And the data captures their strengths and can be a catalyst for change. So let's look at what this report actually looks like. What does it feel like? So our feedback report really aggregates data and provides it to participant and coach in a few different ways. It starts with a very high-level overview of responses, a high-level overview of the competencies in the 4-quadrant model that we saw earlier, and kind of then subsequently digs deep into the data. So the report is provided in an easy-to-use PDF, and easy to read. The first section that you encounter with the SKey is a data validity section. This really provides a summary of where the data came from. Just to let you know, our standard rater categories for this report and for this survey, we have our manager category, direct reports, peers, as well as an all-encompassing others category. And with this, we also want to mention the point of confidentiality. And confidentiality is a huge piece of any 360, any feedback process. So it's something that we are very strict on and very uphold to the highest degree. We do require that all rater categories that I previously mentioned, with the exception of the manager category, have at least 2 valid responses in order for data to process. We never tie individuals' data back to their names. We really try to provide that data in a safe and confidential manner. The next piece of information that's encountered is the SKey summary. And this is a high-level overview of the 12 competencies and based on self-scores versus all other rater scores, so all other raters being the manager, direct reports, peers, and others. It's also overlaid with our general norm group, and the scale runs from never to consistently, as you can see here on your screen. Subsequently, the competency is broken out by rater category and provides, and it's called the Competency Detail section. This breaks data out based on rater groups. This can show an individual interacting with different rater groups differently. So you may be interacting with direct reports in a different way that you're working with your boss. As we know, perception versus intent is a huge piece of this. And the final piece of survey data breaks the competencies into their individual components. So each question that is asked in the SKey survey maps to a competency. This can really be useful when trying to see why an individual scored the way he or she did on an individual competency, so why it was high or low. And the final piece of the SKey is really the verbatim comments. And I know that this is a big piece to a lot of organizations. Matthew uses it. I know a lot of organizations really like it. It really helps to contextualize the survey results and kind of tie some of the data back to some real-life scenarios. There are two questions that are asked in the verbatim comments. It asks you to comment on the individual's strengths as well as their areas for development. So with the SKey, we also have tools that can help to either supplement or introduce the concept to your organization or help facilitate development after the fact. We have things like the e-learning module that's online. We have SKey workbooks, all of the things that you see here. If you want more information on any of these, please reach out to us and we will get back to you. Finally, just want to show you some more examples. We heard a great story with Matthew and the Carlyle group. Share some other examples of how other organizations have used the tool and the success that they have seen. Just give you a moment to kind of look at these. As a reminder, we will be providing these slides to you after the presentation, so if you don't get a chance to read everything, don't worry. We'll send these over to you so you can have a good hard look at them. And so that really brings us to the end of the presentation minus the Q&A session. Before we get to the Q&A session, just like to ask you if you can answer one more polling question. We won't show the results of these, but just so that we can follow up with you. If you'd like any information on emotional intelligence, which we've talked about today, leadership development, employee effectiveness, selection, and high potentials, or off-the-shelf workbooks, which is what we just previously talked about, please let us know, and we will absolutely follow up with you. So we've had a number of good questions come in here today, and as the rest of you are just answering the polling questions, we will start with the Q&A session. So first question was, and Matt, I think that you could speak to this, asked if you were concerned that people would misinterpret the information by giving it to them in advance.
Yes, so that is something that certainly is a concern, and as I mentioned, it's one of the reasons that we don't give it to them, say a week in advance. We wait really to the last second, and so just again, the idea, definitely people can misinterpret them, and people can really, spiral off, particularly if they're getting some pretty difficult feedback around some of their competencies. People can take it pretty hard. But we felt that the value is to kind of pick their heads up, give them some, some real impetus to get get themselves into our program. So, that definitely, we find that actually that definitely helps drive attendance. People get these results, and now they really want to go find out what the heck it means. And it also, but by not giving it to them in the program, we can get them to focus on everything that comes before handing out those results. Otherwise, people just sit there and wait and wait and wait, and really don't pay much attention until you pass out the results. And then they need, a couple of hours, if you will, to go through the report, at least a solid half hour just to look through the report the first time. So, at the risk of some misinterpretation and some difficulty, in handing it out before, we feel it's better to do that. Let them have a look at it, and then come with their questions and their doubts, and we'll start to address them during the program when we start to talk about EI.
Great. Looks like we have a bunch of questions for you, Matt. So, what are your plans for ongoing executive coaching?
So, that it's a good question. Executive coaching is something that I try to look at as something that is aspirational, that we provide to our leaders as a kind of a step up activity, and it's not remedial, if you will. But use of these kinds of results have been helpful in terms of providing information when people get into situations of executive coaching. So that's, we use an executive coaching pool quite judiciously, quite selectively, and we're really examining how we use that going forward as we manage our talent.
We had another question about does HAY offer a certification so that we could administer the assessment and results internally? Absolutely. And Matthew is accredited in our to do just that. We have regional accreditation programs and can send out schedules of when those are happening. We have them all over the United States, really, so that we can, make it easier for you. It's usually a 2-day session that encompasses really everything and goes deep into what we were talking about today. It goes into the model and really the 12 competencies, the history of EI, and how it, in the business context of it. So, absolutely, that's definitely an option that many people have taken. Matthew, I don't know if you want to maybe speak to the accreditation process yourself and how you found it. If you had anything to add about the accreditation itself.
So I went through the accreditation process probably, I'm just going to guess, about 6 years ago, and 5 or 6 years ago, traveled to Boston, thought it was a great process, really learned a lot, went through, of course you go through the 360 yourself, and learn a lot about your own emotional intelligence, and then really how to help people get the most out of the feedback that they're getting is really something that the HAY group was quite good with.
We had a question come in about do you see a possible use for emotional intelligence tools for first-year college students, especially those that do not have a realistic self-awareness of their strengths versus weaknesses? So an example being written communication skills. It's a great question. We recommend that the SKey be used for MBAs in executive education. We do have an actual modified version of the SKey called the SKeyU. It has 2 additional cognitive competencies for undergrads. It's a lower price. It doesn't require accreditation. We can follow up with you on the SKeyU, and if anyone else would like information on the SKeyU, please let us know, because it's the same. It's a very similar model. It's the same idea. It's trying to develop emotional intelligence, but really specific to universities and college-age students. Matt had another question for you about what your experience has been working on EI with us here at HAY Group. So, I guess, in the issue of full transparency, now's your time to give us some feedback there.
Well, so, I think that my experience has always been very positive, hence I'm still using Hey Group and the tool. I mean, I would have moved on long ago. But Hey Group is really willing to work with you. As mentioned, we had a lot of challenges early on and continue to have some challenges around people providing feedback in a timely manner. So I see some of the questions going to how do you avoid or do you experience, rater fatigue. But just the getting people acclimated to providing this feedback for the first time can be a challenge, much less multiple times, and that takes a bit of patience on everybody's end from the administrative side, because we need folks to be able to look at how are things getting completed, and to help send out reminders and drive in folks and keep surveys open for one group and shut down for others. And Hey Group has really worked with me, and there's been really no problem with that. Very, very flexible, and I think that's the key. You don't really want a partner in this who's going to open up the survey for a group of people, shut it down, and the results that you get, well, that's it. You want to be able to, as the program director, look at the results that are coming in and help make the call. Okay, that's probably about all we're going to get for that person. Let's process that report and get it over with. Or I see an opportunity for that person to get some more significant feedback. Their manager hasn't given them the feedback yet. Let's get out there one more time and see if we can make that happen. Hey Group is great about that, and that's really, for me, the most significant thing, is just be able to work with me as a client to make sure that we've kind of gone down as many avenues as possible to get as much good feedback to people as possible.
We have another question about the SKey, the Emotional and Social Competency Inventory, versus a lot of the other EI tools on the market, and kind of how do we differentiate ourselves. And I kind of addressed this a little bit before, but it really is the most well-validated behavioral measure of EI. It's not really based. A lot of organizations are based their EI model off of Goldman and Boyatzis' work, who are two of the most prominent names within EI. But our model is their research. It's the culmination of their research, and I guess not even culmination because it's ongoing. They're constantly looking at it, constantly assessing and sense checking to make sure it is still valid, which I think it very, very much is. So, if anyone is curious about the history of competency development, and we have a lot of technical information that we can send as well on that. And Matthew, I think you kind of did address this, but how do you avoid rater fatigue? I think this is something that everyone really encounters in organizations. How do you kind of walk that fine line between over-surveying a population or individuals, and at the same time getting that valid feedback?
Yeah, from my standpoint, it's really about when and for what purpose. So we know we're going to have our annual 360, and that's going to happen in the September time frame without fail. So certainly just in terms of timing, we keep away from that whole quarter of the year, if you will, from asking anybody to complete yet another survey, another 360 survey. And so that's it's a bit about timing. It's a bit about positioning as well. So the 360 that we ask people for, in terms of performance management, that's really about tying up the end of the year. It's about combining achievement and about what you did and how you did it. But this tool is really about people's professional development. And we go out with that. We make sure that people know, this is a completely different thing that we're asking about in our minds. It is developmental, and you're really, this is in your best interest to help this person and give them the most honest feedback so they can become a better manager. And so no matter where you sit in the organization, helping somebody do that is something that it's hard to say no to. And I think that, the question about, I'm sorry, I saw another question about how many people have gone through our program, and do I coach folks one-on-one. So the answer is we've had almost 200 managers go through the program so far, and we've got another 50 or so to go to the end for the end of the year. And do I sit down with each one of them and do a coaching session? And the answer is yes. Now, I've taken that on because as a new person in this organization, this is a tremendous way for me to get to know the managers in the organization. I get to have a one-on-one conversation with them that moves, that talks about their results and about their experience in the program, but then I get to move on and ask them more pointed questions about their team. So I I benefit as much or more from these conversations in terms of picking up business intelligence as the folks who are being coached. So, I find this to be a great segue for somebody like myself to learn more about the organization and to learn more about the management in the organization.
Great. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions. I'll stall here for a second to see if there's any last questions, but if there isn't, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I think the session's been really great, and really thank Matthew Wells from Carlyle Group for sharing his story and taking time out of his very busy work day to talk with us and talk with you all about this. So thank you, everyone. Our contact information is up here. In case you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will follow up with you. And with that, thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a nice day.